that participated. It was Rich Ida was the tenor soloist. Just beautiful, beautiful. Well, there's a story in, Bruce, Bruce needs a mic. Bruce needs a mic. Gosh, we don't want to have Bruce not have a mic when Bruce needs a mic.
While we're giving accolades out, we have the entire children's impromptu choir sitting right over there that always sing our song of dedication.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I am always lit within when I hear them sing it every time. So thank you for coming and being in person.
Oh, Scal family, Scal children, would you stand? And Irene and Lawrence and Gregor and Tamsin, thank you. Thank you, parents, for birthing them and grandparents for grandparenting them. Good job, good job. It is really just such a sweet moment in our service. Thank you for that, Bruce. Oh yeah, there's Bruce too. He does a lot too. Love you, Bruce. Aww. So there's this story in Buddhism. There's a student of Buddhism, and he was having a hard time with this whole meditation thing. Anybody relate? And every day he'd go to sit down, and his mind would just roll with all the list of the things that had to get done. And so he'd sit for like a minute and get right back up and go off into his day. Well, one day the great Buddhist teacher and monk was coming to town, and so he thought, okay, I'm going to go listen to her, see what she has to say. So he sits and, is very impressed by what she has to say, but also very impressed with how calm she is. She's very calm, and he's thinking, I know this teacher's schedule. They are traveling all the time. They're teaching. They're doing all this stuff. There is no way this must come natural, because they sure aren't meditating. So at the end of the teaching, he gets up his courage, and he says, well, I have a question. So how long is your morning meditation? The teacher says, well, 1 hour. Unless I'm really busy. And the student thinks, aha, I got her. She gets busy too and doesn't meditate at all. And the teacher continued, yes, it's 1 hour, but if I feel really like I have a really busy schedule and I'm really busy and there's a lot on my schedule, then I meditate for 2 hours. Okay, so this is a cute story. You may have heard it before, but none of us actually believe it, do we? No. Because how could spending time on one thing create even more time with something else, right? After all, if you get up at 7 and you have to be at school at 8 or at work or 8, there's no math equation that turns that period of time, that 1 hour period of time, into 2 hours. But maybe it does. So I've been thinking a lot about time lately. Can you believe it's been 7 months since we all got together live in person? I mean, in one way, it feels like it's just been years, and in another way, it just feels like, wow, I can't believe 7 months has gone by already. I recently read a book called The Order of Time. It's by a theoretical physicist, Carlo Rovelli. Now, I'm not going to geek out on you here, and I actually don't know enough to geek out on you, even if I wanted to, but it's been really fun learning about time as I've been rethinking not only this thing called time, but our relationship to time. Now, to look at a clock, it looks like time has, got a lot of equity to time, right? The space, especially the clocks that have the numbers, right? These old-fashioned clocks. The space between the numbers looks pretty equal. Space between 1 and 2, and 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. But we all know that our experience of the time in between those numbers is anything but equal, right? Now, actually, I don't know if you knew this, but for centuries, people divided days into hours that were not actually equal. Did you know that? Kids, did you know that? They were actually determined by the sun. So each day had 24 hours. Daytime had 12, nighttime had 12, but it was determined by sunrise and sunset. So in the summer, the portion of time that an hour would be longer than at night. Interesting. It wasn't until the 14th century in Europe when all those big towers, the church towers came up and the clocks came on and that whole mechanism was developed that we started to run our lives more by this mechanical time. But even without this social invention, scientifically, time is not all equal. So here's another interesting fact. Did you know that time passes more quickly at higher altitudes? Okay? The further away you are from the Earth's surface compared to up high, the slower it is. This effect is known as the gravitational time dilation. Okay, there's one for the books. It's predicted in Einstein's theory of general relativity, and it's been verified over and over again. And this isn't some Doc Brown from the Tao Te Ching, is often translated like this: nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Nature knows how to listen to Kairos time. Right? And the good news is we are also part of nature. So we too do not need to hurry to have all things be accomplished. In fact, science is showing us what our monk in the opening story and meditators have known for a long time. The way to make time is actually to take time. There was an experiment done by Dr. Robin Kramer from the Kent School of Psychology and her research team. They wanted to see how even a brief period of meditation impacted someone's experience of time. So they took a bunch of participants, they divided them into 2 groups, and everyone had to do a subjective time test. That's when they asked, kind of like what Lindy did in little ways, like be quiet for a period of time and then guess how much time that period of time was. So that was the subjective time test they took. And then they each were split into 2 groups, and they had 10 minutes to listen to a recording. Group 1 listened to a recording of a story. That was a very sequential story. This happened, then that happened, then that happened in the story. And Group 2 was led in a meditation that was designed for them to focus on their breathing and their breath and their body. And then afterwards, they had all the people retake that subjective time test. And the results showed that those that listened to the story, they didn't change their responses. They had about the same amount of estimation of how much time had passed. But the ones that did the meditation, they felt that the time periods were much longer. They felt like time was more spacious. They experienced a period of time as having much more time in it. So how can this be? Well, it turns out that often our thoughts are streaming in our consciousness one after another, right? Like even while I'm talking, even while you're listening to me, I'm sure there's also this like subtext, right? There's these thoughts going on. There's the list of to-dos. There's the things that are happening next. So the brain becomes very busy. And this kicks in this chronological time, or this Kairos time, this wanting to divide things into finite pieces of time. But what happens is during meditation, or maybe other activities like petting a kitty, when you're not thinking about anything in particular, the mind starts to relax. And as soon as your thoughts start to detach from space, right, from a specific space, you're not thinking about a specific space-time, the thoughts actually slow, and you have less stress, and you begin to have more space. It begins to feel like there is more time. Einstein himself was quoted as saying that time and space are not places we live. They are states of mind. They are modes of being. I love that quote. I don't know if he really did it. I tried to find an attribution and I couldn't, so maybe somebody fudged on that one. But I love this idea that time and space are not places we live. They are states of mind. So it's not just our incessant planning that has caused stress over time. Ten Denka, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister and a wonderful teacher, she describes the difference in time based on our point of focus. And she calls one sacred time and the other fleeting time. Sacred time, she says, is not the opposite of profane time. Sacred time, she says, is the opposite of fleeting time. And fleeting time is that kind of time in which we are distracted, racing around, trying to catch up as we fall further behind. That's fleeting time. It's that working on the computer while we also are talking on the phone and we have our iPad open just in case we get a notification. So let's just pause for that a moment. I'm going to just ask those here to just raise your hand if you've ever done multi-teching, where you have more than one device open and operating at one time. Right? Oh, okay, Bruce is doing it now. It's fleeting time. It's fleeting time. Tendenka goes on to describe coming into what she calls sacred time. She said, sacred time is noticing Having enough awareness to notice. Notice what? Notice the subtle things. Can you notice the shift in someone's voice when you're talking to them? And ask them what's wrong, perhaps? Can you notice someone's presence or not presence? Can you notice someone's body language? Can you notice the space around you, maybe spaces that you go into again and again? This brings about this sacred time. So I'm going to invite you to reflect for just a moment on your day, just so far. So out of these 4 categories, think about what percentage of your day today so far was in response to structured time. You had to be somewhere at a certain time, get certain things done. The AV team is thinking 100%. And how much would you say was fleeting time, time where you were multitasking, not really focused on one thing strongly because you had multiple focuses at one time? And then think about what percentage of time did you spend today listening for subtle messages around you, messages from your children, your partner, your friends, your parents. And how much time did you spend a day that just felt like it arose? It wasn't planned, it just arose because it felt like the perfect time to do it. We can look at our children for inspiration about that kind of time, I think. Children have this natural instinct for this this Kairos sacred time. They often laugh. Why? Just because it bubbles up within them. They run and they jump because the moment invites them to do that, and they're responding to that. One of the worst things I think we do in our culture is to take that wonderful Kairos sacred children force and try to squish it too much into our Chronos fleeting bound adult lives. Tendenka offers another point about sacred time when she says that it's the time of our bodies. It's the time to become present with the physical sensations. I want everybody, if you are able, to either touch your fingers or wiggle your toes and ask yourself, when was the last time you did that? When was the last time? Like, think of your little toe. Everybody wiggle your little toe if you're able, or wiggle a finger. And ask yourself, when was the last time I actually noticed that little toe? It's been there this whole time. Just minding its own business. So this is what Tendenka says can draw us into this sacred time by becoming really aware of so many things, these sensual things that are around us. And I loved Lindy's story today, and it echoes so well Rovilli's science and Tendenka's philosophy. This idea that the world is not made up of things. There is nothing here. The world is made up of events. Right? A seed falls to the ground, it germinates, it sprouts, it grows, this beautiful flower emerges, then the leaves wilt, and it goes back to the ground. Was the flower a thing, or was it an event? Each day we wake up, life unfolds, ideas germinate, creation happens, we get tired and we go to bed. Are we a thing, or are we an event? I don't know about you, but I really love the science and the philosophy of viewing myself and each of you as this beautiful event that arises and occurs at just the right time. Everything is in a continual state of change, and I say there is time for everything. Ed, we got time. So may you listen deeply. May you listen to this Kairos time. May you find sacred time in each other. And may you just find joy in watching yourself arise as an event, and then another, and then another. It's been great to be with you this morning and share